in the last module, we saw that what a person says might mean something different than what they actually said. Now, starting from this module, we will start to take a closer look and see how something that someone says can mean different things and where these different meanings can come from. So to start, we're going to look at 3 different aspects of the meaning of an utterance. So the first question we have to think of is what can cause something to have different meanings, right? If a person says something and it means other things, what are the sources of those other meanings? Where do those other meanings come from? One way that we can have different meanings is from linguistics, right? So language is inherently ambiguous, and there are lots of ways that ambiguous language can make one sentence have different meanings. So for example, there are words that have multiple meanings, like bank can be the place you go for money, or it can be the side of a river. There are also different structures. So one sentence could have 2 different structures that give it different meanings. For example, if I said, I'll ask them to deliver the package here tomorrow, does that mean right now I'm going to ask them, and what I will ask them is deliver the package tomorrow? Or does it mean I'll call them tomorrow and tell them to deliver the package? Maybe tomorrow I will call them and say, deliver the package next week. So there are different structures of this. Another way that things can be ambiguous is because of what we call deixis terms or indexical terms. So for example, if I say, I went hiking yesterday, the word I is ambiguous because it means something different depending on who says it. If I say that, it means I went hiking yesterday. But if you say that, it has a different meaning, right? There's also the word yesterday is also indexical, because if I say the sentence on Monday, then it means I went hiking on Sunday. If I say this sentence, I went hiking yesterday on Friday, then it means I went hiking on Thursday, right? So these are some ways that a sentence can have different meanings just because of linguistics. Another way that we saw a sentence can have different meanings is outside of linguistics. It's the fact that people say things different than what they mean, as we saw in the previous modules. So to formalize this and organize these concepts a little more, let's look at the 3 levels of meaning that Jenny Thomas describes in the textbook. So she divides meaning into abstract meaning, utterance meaning, and force. Abstract meaning is linguistic meaning. It's all the possible things that something could mean. So if I say a sentence like, I went to the bank yesterday, this could mean many different things because of the way linguistics works, because of the word bank has different meanings. The way that syntax puts these words together can cause them to mean different things. So if we apply the rules of language to figure out every possible structure and every possible meaning that we could have from that sentence, that's the abstract meaning of the sentence. Utterance meaning is the next level of meaning. That's when we pick out one meaning out of all those possible meanings, right? So when I utter a sentence, that's a particular event, right? At a particular time and particular place, I'm saying this sentence and I want to express something. So for example, if I say, let's meet at the bank, that sentence could mean let's meet at the Hang Seng Bank to get money, or it could mean let's meet by the side of the river. But when I said it, I intended one of those, right? So the utterance meaning is the one that I intended at that time out of the different possible meanings. And finally, force is like what we called what is meant in the previous module. So force is the idea that the person actually wants to express with their language, and it might be different from what they literally said. So we can summarize these ideas in a table to get a clear idea of what they are. In particular, we can think of where each part of the meaning comes from and why it's ambiguous, right? So abstract meaning comes from the rules of language, right? Things like syntax, semantics, phonetics, phonology. These are all of those topics that you've studied are what contributes to the abstract meaning, right? So if you hear a person say something, you use your phonetics and phonology to figure out what those sounds are. You use your morphology to figure out what words those sounds represent. You use your syntax and your semantics to figure out how they go together to make a sentence. And at every step of the way, there could be ambiguity. There could be different ways to put those together. So all of that linguistic stuff leads to the abstract meaning, which is ambiguous because language is often ambiguous. Right? The next step of understanding meaning is that we can figure out what the utterance meaning is. Right? So where utterance meaning comes from is we take the abstract meaning and we use the context, or we use our assumptions about the speaker to figure out which of those ambiguous meanings is the one that was actually intended. So for example, the word I is inherently ambiguous because it means something different every time a different person says it. But if I see a certain person say, I want Coke, then I see which person is saying it and I know which person the word I refers to. So that's figuring out the utterance meaning. But utterance meaning is still ambiguous because people don't always say exactly what they mean, just like we saw in the examples of Jonathan's letter to Mary in the bottle and other examples like that. So the last level of meaning is force, right? So that's what the person actually wants to communicate, what they actually mean by the thing that they said. And we understand, we get to force by doing what we would call pragmatic reasoning. We think about what the speaker intends, what the speaker believes, what the speaker wants, and figure out what message they're trying to tell us. So most of the rest of our semester will be focused on this step of figuring out what a person's force is based on what they said and these kinds of pragmatic reasonings, which is what we're going to learn about in the following modules. So these are 3 levels of meaning, and keep these in mind because most of the rest of the semester is going to be focused on this step of how we figure out the force of what somebody says.